Hello, I'm Lorette Ligon, President of the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee, I want to thank you for joining us for Forum Onslow. The Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee works with government agencies on issues that affect our business community. We monitor legislative issues that impact local business. We promote partnerships between business, government, military, and education. And we use these forums to create awareness on topics that are important to our community. And we all know that the Board of Education is very important to our community. So without further ado, let's get started, and I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Elliott Potter.
Thank you, Lorette, and thanks to everybody, both the audience and the candidates, for participating in today's forum for the candidates. These are the candidates that are in the Republican primary for the Onslow County Board of Education. We will have 6 Republicans on the ballot. We have 4 of them with us today, and they will be seeking one of 4 open seats that are on the board. There isn't a Democratic primary, because I think they only have 1 candidate. I believe I'm right about that. And I would note too that this is just the second full election or general election. I believe it's the second one that we've had with since the legislature passed a bill that makes this a partisan race. By that we mean that these candidates or candidates can file under a party label, either Republican or Democrat, or they can take certain steps and run and see if they can qualify as unaffiliated. All of the seats on the Board of Education are at large. So with that, I want to go over a few rules we have for tonight's forum. Most of you, I think, in fact, I've already found out that this is a group that did the homework, that they're familiar with the format. We're going to have a 2-minute opening statement available and a Q&A period that will follow. And then that will be followed by a 2-minute closing statement. We also have the opportunity for rebuttals today. You will have you have 2 rebuttal cards, and you have 30 seconds for those rebuttals, 60 seconds to answer the questions. In the interest of time, of course, you are limited to 2, so we ask that you use those wisely. All you got to do is just raise your card, and then I will come back to you if I see you. If I don't, just scream at me. But you raise your card, and I'll come back to you for the rebuttal. At the end, of course, we'll have the summations. If there was an issue we didn't discuss, it's a good time to bring it up. And I would like to also remind you, one of the things that I generally will say here, is this is a forum, it's not a true debate. We ask that you address the audience, not each other. And at the end, we also are going to ask the audience to refrain from applause during the program so that we can keep this thing moving. We're going to do this in about an hour. And at the end, we'll give everybody a chance to clap, like I say, if you follow the time limit. It's not, if you don't, we're going to do cat calls, okay? But other than that, we're all right. When you see a yellow light, it will mean that you have 30 seconds to end your response. When you get to that point, to the end of the response with the red light, I would ask that you conclude with the sentence that you're on. Basically, that doesn't mean go ahead and conclude the whole thought. You may not be able to do that, but at least stop with that sentence. I know it may be awkward, but that's the only fair way to do it. And we'll get going with the opening statements. During the opening statements, we will ask each candidate to state your name and provide us with a sentence or 2 of background information to introduce yourselves, including where you reside in the area and what your occupation might be. So to the candidates, I ask if you have any questions about this. And no rebuttals so far, so we'll keep going. Laura Deptola, we'll ask you to get started.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Laura Deptola. I am a Long Island native, and I've resided here in Onslow County for the past 6 years in Hubert. I'm married to a former Marine who works locally in Jacksonville. I have 3 older children who've been through the school system already in another state, and I have 2 young children who will be entering Onslow County School District 1 this September. And my decision to run for Onslow County Board of Education came very easily when thinking about enrolling my 5-year-old in kindergarten. I had my own concerns as a parent. And speaking to community members, those community members I've spoken to have the same concerns as me, and they feel that they're not being listened to. So I felt the best way for me to advocate for not only my children, but everyone's children, was to run for the Board of Education. So thank you so much.
All right, and Melissa Tate Oakley, after this point, I'm gonna call you, so.
Yes. All right, my name is Melissa Oakley. As some of you in the room already know, I live in Sneedsbury, North Carolina. And we've been here in the area since 2009. My husband is a Marine, currently fixing to retire here in April after 20 years of service to this country. We have 2 children currently in the Onslow County school system who are in the Dixon schools. And I also have an adult child who formerly attended Dixon schools. She is now married and has 2 children of her own. And so, you know, if they ever come back to this area, obviously I have a concern about Onslow County education. As far as my career fields go, well, that comes with many hats. Some of you have seen me being a freelance reporter or known through the Onslow Beat, which I founded as an independent media brand. I am a 4th District guardian ad litem. I advocate for children in the court system that are neglected and abused. So I have experience advocating. I also have experience with management because I worked for several years with a company on North Topsail Island that services rental homes, and I managed a team there, also inspected homes, and was responsible for hiring and recruiting staff to keep us out through the summer. As far as the school goes, you know, I have an interest in this because I got tired of hearing parents say, this isn't happening, they're not listening to me. And, you know, some of those things I could relate to, and some of them I could not. But being an advocate naturally, I'm willing to step in the game.
All right, thank you. Kid Reddick.
Elliot, now, is this our opening statement? Or
Yes,
is
it
we,
is.
okay, very good. I just want to make sure. I wasn't sure we were just introducing ourselves. And,
Yeah, well, you do need to introduce yourself.
All right.
And maybe include those things. We've got a little trouble
Okay.
with the sound too. I think we've got that straightened out, but.
we need to stop our
We'll
clock.
we'll go.
Yeah, you need some seconds back.
Here's my rebuttal.
We're not going to shoot you. We'll just stop.
I'm Ken Reddick. I've lived in Onslow County for 50 years. Gives you an idea of how old I might be. My wife is here tonight. She is a lifelong educator. I spent 44 years in the public schools of North Carolina, all right here in Onslow County. My Board of Education slogan is putting students first. And as long as we do that, we are going to be fine as a school system. I want you to consider these 4 qualifications. Number 1, experience. As I said, 44 years in education. In 2018, I was appointed to the Board of Education due to a vacancy on the board. Since that time, I've attended all meetings, gone to training, worked with a superintendent, and particularly very closely during Hurricane Florence. Knowledge. I think I have a good understanding of the way the system works, the way the policies are written, the guidelines that we all have to follow. And I do have a very good understanding of the North Carolina educational standards that guide our instruction. Commitment. A resident of Onslow County for 50 years, and my wife went to Onslow County School. My 2 daughters went to Onslow County School. I have a granddaughter that's in middle school right now. I believe I have a good pulse on the community. And since becoming a board member, I think I've attended just about every event I possibly could, just to show them that I do support what's going on in the school. There have been some accomplishments I think I should mention. We've opened a couple of new schools since I've been on the board. The new Regional Skills Center. We have 2 schools under construction. We have a new funding formula, a revised funding formula, which we just passed today as far as the Board of Education. We've expanded our partnerships. And in summary, I have the time and I think I have the passion to serve the citizens of Onslow County. Thank you.
Thank you. And Joseph Speranza.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to listen to me speak today. My name is Joe Speranza, and obviously running for the Board of Education. My family and I have been living here in Jacksonville since 2006. I graduated from South Mecklenburg High School in Charlotte back in 1991. I enlisted into the Navy shortly after graduation, spent 26 years serving our country. I retired just about 3 years ago as a Senior Chief Petty Officer and Hospital Corpsman. My military experience is in emergency medicine, medical education, operations management, facilities management, and human resource management. I hold a bachelor's degree in business administration from Excelsior College, a master's in management and leadership from Webster. I'm actually in my last capstone class for my second master's degree in procurement and acquisitions. Since I've retired, I've served with several organizations that give back to our community here. I've been on this I'm on the board of directors and the treasurer for the Fleet Reserve Association. And I'm also currently the vice chair of the Parks and Rec Committee Advisory Committee for here in Jacksonville. With regard to youth development, I've been a coach for the Jazz and Soccer Association, the Storm Football. I'm an adult leader for the largest and most active Boy Scout troop that we have here in our district. I've been married to my wife for over 20 years. We have 2 children that have come up through the Onslow County school systems. My son is in his first year at UNC Pembroke. My daughter is a sophomore at Jacksonville High School. Our most important resources that we have here in our school system are our teachers, and supporting our teachers is a primary goal of mine. With my background in business, I'm running my campaign on the need for fiscal responsibility and more transparency within our system so everybody understands what's going on and what decisions the board's making. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, candidate. Now we'll get going with the questions. And Joseph Speranza, we're going to start with you and work our way back to the other down the table. And you can talk a little bit about the way you concluded your statement there, because I'm asking what you see as the most significant challenge that's facing Onslow County school system, and what solutions would you propose to address it?
Wow, all in a minute. Our biggest issue that we have in our school system right now is our facilities. I mean, we do not have the facilities to house all of our students that we have. We have a growing community where our county increases by close to 300 students per year. And it's not all in one section, they're spread out around it. That's, if you're keeping a 1 to 30 teacher to student ratio, that's 10 classrooms a year that's needed as an increase. When you're putting things like this together in your fiscal responsibilities, we have temporary trailers that were put in place to, stem the need of our new facilities and fixing our facilities. Some of those temporary trailers were put in place when my college-age son was in elementary school, so they're not really temporary. They're still in place. They're inadequate for what we need. We need bigger facilities, and I know we're opening up some new elementary schools, and we have those already started. That's just what it is, a start. And I feel my background in facilities would be very keen and very instrumental to making sure that these get completed correctly and that we forecast enough for our next school years.
Okay, thank you. Candidates, we're going to pause a minute here. We're having some problems with the sound system. As most of you know, this broadcast, or this will be broadcast, this forum will be broadcast on G10, so the sound is important, and we got to get it right. Joseph, I'm going to make sure that we don't have to come back to you at some point.
I can repeat it again.
We need to, so that we can get it right, but I'm not sure that we do, but we will pause a minute so we get that. Okay. Thanks again for your patience. We apologize for the delay, but I'm hoping, and I think we've got things straightened out. We're going to start again with our opening question, and we're going to start with Joseph Speranza and work our way to the left, or to my left. What do you think is the most significant challenge facing Onslow County school systems, and what solutions would you propose to address it?
Well, our biggest challenge that we have with our school system today is our facilities. We don't have enough adequate facilities to teach all of our students in a community that grows as much as we do. We grow about 300 students per year on an average, and if we're keeping a ratio of 1 teacher per 30 students, that's equivalent to about 10 classrooms a year. Now, it's not nice and convenient where it's only in this school or only in this school, it's throughout the entire community. So you need good forecasting and good planning on putting things together and, building enough school systems for us. The school system in the past has put in trailers that were temporary trailers to fix some of these school systems. And as I'm always advocating saying, that some of those trailers were put in place when my high school or college-age student was in elementary school, so they're not temporary anymore. We are building new schools. I do have a background in facilities management, as mentioned earlier. And with that background and that forecasting background that I have, I'll be a good asset to the board for being able to forecast what kind of facilities we're going to need in the future and what the money is going to be pushed into it.
Okay, Mr. Reddick?
I think Joe has done a good job talking about the facility needs, certainly a big thing for Onslow County and its growth, but I do believe the number one problem is teachers. We have a shortage of teachers. I remember back in the day, I might have as many as 100 applicants for one position. We're lucky to find 5 applicants for that position. I think a solution for that is to make sure we continue the salary schedule and the salary supplement that we provide here in Onslow County. I think that's crucial. We need to continue those programs that support teachers, particularly at the onset when they are beginning teachers, either 22-year-olds or the non-traditional teacher who comes in later. We need to make sure that we continue to do those kinds of things and support them in any way we can, give them clean, modern buildings to teach in, and I think that will make a big difference.
Ms. Oakley?
My answer to what the significant challenge that the school system faces, of course we have many. We've already heard 2 great answers already, and I completely agree with these gentlemen for what they've already said, but I want to look at a different side of a challenge that we have, and I can't explain this all in 1 minute, and I'm already down some seconds, so forgive me. I believe that one of our greater challenges is that we have a lot of social issues that we are not willing to address head on. We keep talking about equity, but we're not pushing equity by policy, and we're not trying to get the teachers that would exemplify that equity throughout the school system. Where are the teachers that would identify with the children that are Hispanic or the children that are African American or that might be Asian? We need to kind of balance the playing field here. We have teachers that are dealing with things like lack of resources in the classroom, and those teachers are also facing social issues. I mean, some of our teachers are still recovering from Florence. Where is the support for our teachers? And I believe that is something that is a great challenge in Onslow County that we can change.
Okay, Ms. Deptola?
Thank you. I have 2 answers to this question. The first challenge I think we're facing is, number one, a resounding from the community is bullying. Bullying is a major problem, and parents are communicating to me that they don't feel like their concerns are being heard and addressed. And children in Onslow County are being bullied unmercifully to the point where parents are considering taking their children out and homeschooling them. So that needs major addressing. There needs to be education on bullying, there needs to be parent involvement, and there needs to be a strict zero tolerance policy. My second answer to this question is school security and school safety. That was one of the things I considered when I didn't know if I wanted to send my 5-year-old to school. Is he safe? Is he physically safe? Are our schools safe and ready for tragedy, unfortunately, other states have faced? And I don't feel that they are.
Okay, thank you. And I will, there's a rebuttal coming. Okay, Ms. Oakley?
Not really a rebuttal completely, but I want to touch on what Laura said here about bullying. Bullying is a great conversation that we keep hearing about. It is an ongoing issue. It does not only affect our students, it's also affecting our teachers. We have teachers that are not being respected in the classroom by students because they're being bullied as well, and the teachers can't fight back. So we need to set some policy, and some very strict policy, and fight back for our teachers and our students in Onslow County.
Okay. I would also let you know that some of these issues will be covered later on as we go through the questions. So, but I want to find out what your priorities are. Okay. I'd like to know, and we'll start with Mr. Reddick on this one, and move to the left and come back to Mr. Speranza, to my left. How would you rate the school system's accessibility to parents and the public at large? What suggestions would you have for making sure parents are staying connected to schools?
I think probably the thing that we do a good job of, and I'm sure there's always room for improvement, is making sure that when we have various occasions for parents to come into the building, that there's a focus on learning. It's not just to come in and see a few pieces of paper laying on the desk, but it's always that, how does this relate to the learning that my child is getting? I think parents really want to see that. Parents do have an opportunity to keep track of children's grades these days through the parent portal. Many of the schools that I visit and many of the schools that I know about do have quite a few celebrations, special events where they highlight literacy, they highlight what's going on in math, what's going on in science. As long as curriculum related, I think we can keep parents involved in that. And we got to offer that constantly. I think overall we do a very good job of that in Onslow County Schools.
Okay, Ms. Oakley?
As far as accessibility goes to the public with the school system, I believe that the board meets that on the system aspect, but not the public overall. Not everybody has internet in Onslow County. All of our parents don't have internet, so the children don't have access to that. So how are they supposed to know what's going on with the online reach? I think that we need to be a little bit like what my old pastor used to say, faithful, available, and teachable. And that means that we need to be faithful to the system and what the board's governance stands for. And we also need to be available. That means in society, more than just in the classrooms and more than just at the schools. We need to be out in the streets and creating town halls again and actually marketing those things to the public. Because if we don't, we're not reaching them, so we're not teaching them.
Okay, and Mr. Deptola?
Thank you. I have to repeat again, what I'm hearing from community members is they don't feel like there's accessibility. They don't feel like they're being listened to. They may attend a board meeting, they may attend a PTA meeting, they may voice their concerns, and then they feel like nothing happens after that. Calls go unanswered, and parents don't feel like there's a connection between the school and the parent. If elected, I would like to see a parent advocacy program instituted separate from Board of Education meetings where parents can feel comfortable to come, sit with board members that would want to be there, voice their concerns without having to feel embarrassed of being in a public forum and, have an actual conversation, not so much a general public meeting.
And Mr. Speranza?
Well, parents' accessibility to schools can always be improved. There's always ways to make improvements on simple things like that. At the elementary and middle school levels, the PTOs are a great place. I mean, when my son was in elementary school at Parkwood, my wife was the treasurer for the PTO. The amount of information that we got and what we received from the boards at that point was phenomenal. It was a lot of information, and you don't even have to be a member of the board itself. You just have to show up to those PTO meetings, get that word that's there. Now, the next piece is at the high school levels or the upper grade levels, we get the weekly robocalls every week from our principals. We dread the calls from Brent Anderson saying that the schools are going to be closed for whatever the next weather-related issue is, but we appreciate that kind of information because at least it's a way it's getting pushed out to the parents. When it comes to meeting with people, if I was on the board, then yes, attending different PTO meetings, you can't get to them all. There's too many schools and too many meetings. But showing up and getting the word out so there is a little bit more communication, at least results from what the questions they have where they can be answered.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start this time with Ms. Oakley and move to the left again and back this way. Of course, the safety of our schools, as some of you already mentioned, continues to be on everybody's mind. What can and should be done to harden our schools, and I'll put that in quotes because that's been the word that a lot of people have used, and make them more resistant to the kind of attacks that are every parent's nightmare?
Okay, well, my answer to that is, first of all, we do need to strengthen the bullying policy. That is something that's already on my website, and it has been since November. So you can review that there by going to my website, which is on my campaign page on Facebook, and I'll share that information later if anybody wants it. But anyway, I believe we need to strengthen our schools by, again, enforcing more policy when it comes to bullying, because what's happening to these children is the same thing that happens to a child that deals with child abuse. They react the same exact way. And so if you have children in the school system, which some of them are, that are facing child abuse at home and they come to school and they're being abused at school by a peer or possibly even a teacher or a faculty member, they're going to react out. And I think what we need to do as far as the infrastructure goes is that these learning trailers are not secure. I could literally walk into any learning trailer any part of the day and nobody would ever know it. So how is that secure?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tola?
Thank you. I feel like schools should be secure as a court building. Our judges and the court, people in the courts are protected. You can't get a gun into court because there's metal detectors, there's safeguards, doors are locked. I feel like there should be one entrance into the school that's locked, that you have to show ID to get through that door. I am a supporter of armed guards at the school that would be there to respond to an active shooter situation. And I feel like our children need to be educated on what to do in the event one of those tragedies happen.
Okay, Mr. Speranza?
Obviously, recent tragedies nationally is what brought this to our doorstep. My background and several of my commands, I had the collateral duty of being the anti-terrorism officer. So putting a lot of these policies and procedures into place is something that I've had a lot of experience doing with different commands and different buildings. There's a difference. We have to really define what hardening means. I mean, do we want it to look like a prison? Do we want bars on the windows and barbed wire and chain link like they have in a lot of places in Southern California? Or do we want a learning environment? The other issues that we have with that of a lot of our schools are not single buildings, they're open plans. You can't harden an open courtyard. It doesn't work that way. Not without making it look like a military situation that you really don't want. There are ways to do things. There are softer hardening ways of doing things. Working with your sheriff's department, are we utilizing our resource officers? Do we have enough resource officers? There's a lot of things that are in place that are going now with the doorbells for entrance in certain areas. There are a lot of room for improvement, but I also know that the school system is doing things that they don't let the public know because it's not something you should let the public know because you don't give the enemy all the ideas of how to defeat your system. So, but it is something to look into.
Thank you. And Mr. Reddick, the question before us is the safety of our schools. What can or should be done to harden our schools or make them more resistant to the kind of attacks that no parent wants to see?
Yes, since we have 506 learning cottages, it is very difficult to harden all the schools to the same degree. The newer schools certainly are easier to harden. But I do believe that the most important thing is that we continue to forge partnerships with our police and sheriff's department, that we have a concerted effort to work with mental health professionals, with counselors, schoolwork. As long as we get people working together and we identify those children, those situations, and even those places that might present some danger in the future, I think we're on the right track. We've added 7 additional SROs just this year. We've certainly added counselors, social workers for the high schools. We've provided training for the teachers when it comes to traumatic situations. So I do believe we're working very well together in that, and that's the key. If we don't work together as a community and the parents don't expect it, it won't happen.
All right. And we're going to start down back as we did at the first round with Ms. Deptola, and we'll work our way down the table again. This is sort of, I guess, that gets right down to the basics here. But I'd like to know what you feel the Board of Education can do to increase math and reading scores for Onslow County students.
What I feel can be done to increase math and reading scores is when children are suffering with their grades in those subjects, we need to identify that immediately, and children need to be given the help that they need, whether it be extra help after school or a tutor. Sometimes, like Melissa said, parents don't have the internet. They can't access the grades as they go along or their homework. And some parents work 2 and 3 jobs and can't check the homework. And there needs to be definite communication between the teacher and the parents so that parents are aware when children aren't doing well so that they can immediately get the help and not fall too far behind.
Okay.
Would you repeat the question?
Yes, I sure will. If I can find it. What can the Board of Education do to increase math and reading scores for Onslow students?
Well, that goes with several different things that it probably will take more than a minute to get into. However, I believe that the key issue here that we all keep hearing about, and I completely agree with, is eliminate Common Core. It is hard for the teachers to teach, and it's definitely hard for the parents to help their kids with, and it's also hard for the students to understand some of the language that we're seeing and some of this technology we're using in the Onslow County school system. You know, we just had our state superintendent to use nearly $100,000 to implement back into the system on an emergency that was not an emergency, you know, with this iStation deal. Teachers are telling me in the elementary schools when I'm having conversations with them beyond my children's teachers that this stuff is actually not good communicating the language to the children that they have competency of. So they'll do poorly on these tests and these assessments, but then they show that they can do the work in the classroom. So it seems like we need to get away from indoctrinating them with how to think, but allowing them to freely think by what the teachers are able to freely teach.
Okay. Mr. Reddick?
I think probably the first thing we can do is to start early. Early childhood programs are crucial to student success. If children are not succeeding by the time, and when I say that, reading and doing basic math by 3rd grade, it's really difficult to catch up. It creates a real issue. As far as math, we do have currently teachers who are involved in an ECU math program to help enhance teacher preparation and teacher knowledge when it comes to teaching math. Teachers in elementary school will be the first to tell you they enjoy teaching reading, but math maybe not so much, so I think that's it. As far as reading goes, a balanced approach to reading is very important. We can't put all our eggs in one basket. We have to make sure we reach all those learning styles for all those children.
Okay. And Mr. Speranza?
There aren't enough rebuttal cards on this table to keep this one going, so I'm going to take a slice of this right here. I think it's actually even earlier. Back to the basics, back to the basics, and back to the basics. First, you have to hire the qualified teachers. Pay them well. Allocate your resources appropriately when you're using the technology, supplies, programs. Make sure it's all at the right level. You need to support your teachers, not only with the money, but with flexible scheduling, so that way they have the time for their planning and the time to assist those students that need extra assistance. And I'm in wholehearted agreement with Mr. Reddick saying that you need to start at that elementary level. And right along the line with our other candidates over here, the Common Core is one of the biggest problems that we have at those early levels that we're going with, both in math and with the reading. They don't teach phonics anymore with it. They don't teach phonetics. They teach you by word recognition. It doesn't help when you don't recognize the word or doesn't know what it means. Math is estimating. Last time I checked, it happens every time in a McDonald's drive-thru, they estimate my change because they can't figure it out. They're all taught on this Common Core system. You need to have back to the basics in real math and real English.
Mr. Reddick has a rebuttal card up.
There is no Common Core.
No.
Common Core went out the window almost 2 years ago. I will say, in our defense, in your defense, Common Core was confusing for a lot of people. It was so intricate that it was difficult to get through the language. So I just want everybody to know there is no Common Core, and we certainly continue to teach phonics. Phonics is a big part of our reading program in Onslow County.
Ms. Oakley?
As a mother of an elementary school student here in Dixon schools, I have seen what Joe just mentioned firsthand. They are learning sight words. That is memorization. It is not teaching phonics. I have talked to other parents that have elementary school children who are saying their children can pick out a word, but they cannot form a sentence. That is a problem. That is exactly what Joseph just said. So we need to actually, I think, probably have some more conversations hands-on in the community and actually reach some of these parents to understand what the issues are, so then we can better address them as a board.
Okay. We done with our additional time request? All right.
I'm out of cards. Somebody else. Somebody might
I'm
have to
selling them
loan
on
me
the black
one.
market. How do you guys?
How much?
All my chips are on the table.
Well, somebody asked yesterday about selling them, and I said, I
Right,
got to
yeah.
get half the money if you do.
I'll go ahead and use mine.
Okay.
Well, one of the responsibilities I've had as an educator is literacy. I worked in literacy for many, many years, and I can tell you sight words is a part of learning. There's some things in life you have to memorize, you have to know. But through sight words, that's when you start talking about phonics, and you look at some basic words, and then you start talking about this syllabication of words, and so it's all works together. There's no one way to teach reading, I can promise you.
Okay. All right, so let's move, I want to move to a couple of questions here. And Ms. Oakley, we'll start with you this time and work our way. We're going to continue this rotation this time. I want to ask you a couple of questions about budgeting.
Okay.
And which is, has been a tough topic here lately, even though there has been some changes even in the last day or two. How would you describe, candidates, how would you describe the proper relationship between the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education? Should the school board provide information to the county board, to the commissioners, that would enable a line item budget review? And I'll start with you.
I completely agree with that. That is one of my platform points that I'm very, very passionate about. I feel like that the school board should be passionate or dedicated enough to issue a line-by-line budget. That means where every single cent goes, every pencil that's bought school by school, then we need to show it on the line. You know, we keep talking about transparency in politics, but do we really show it? Because when we see the budget, it's very skeletal. There's no meat on those bones. It literally is just a bag of bones sitting there saying we have sections of things that are money, you know, we spent this here and we spent it there, but every school needs to have a budget that is available to the public so we have full transparency between not only the Board of Commissioners, but also the public. Because when you are in the public eye and you go look on the online websites, you have to dig for information. And it should be a more easily accessible site to find the things that you want to know as constituents of the people in Onslow County.
Okay, Mr. Reddick?
It's going to be impossible to have a line-by-line budget for everyone to examine, mainly because money is not given line by line. Money comes from the state, it comes from the local community, it comes from the federal government, it comes from grants, and it's almost always program budgets. Money comes in programs, and then that money is in turn divvied out on a per-pupil basis, and also with low wealth money and certain federal funds. That money is given to those schools who are most needy, particularly based on the demographics of free and reduced lunch, you know, for those students, for those schools that have more poverty in their schools. So it's going to be impossible to do everything line by line. I'm not sure that really does any good, except that I would stay in touch with my principal, my school, and I would ask those questions. I think that's completely fair.
It's not available to the public.
Okay, Mr. Speranza?
Well, you need to have a strong relationship between the Board of Education and your county commissioners. At one point it affected my family. I was given orders to Millington, Tennessee. I showed up with the intent to bring in my family about mid-school year so the kids didn't miss any school. That summer, the Memphis Board of Education and the county commissioners could not come up with a budget. The school year didn't start on time. That's tragic on way too many levels. But it also affected my family because I left my kids here with my wife for those 3 years because I didn't want to move them out of the Onslow County school system. We've always had a good relationship. And I know there's several commissioners that are up for re-election this year and people running for that one, so you need to pay close attention to who you're going to put on each of these boards so they can actually work together and keep this. Do we need a line-by-line budget? There needs to be a lot of detail on there, and I do understand programs, I do understand fiscal responsibility, and again, that's one of the platforms that I'm running on. So I do have the background experience in this, and this is something I know I would be able to bring as an asset, not to mention the fact that I always count collaboration as one of my skills, and I can get along with pretty much anybody. So if you get me on the board, I can work with anybody that's on the other side.
Okay, and Ms. Tola?
Thank you. I support a line-by-line budget for the Board of Education to submit to the Board of Commissioners because the public wants to know where the money is being spent, and they don't know. It's not available to the public. You can't go to a website and see where your money is going. I had a community member this morning call me and ask me, what is the $25 per laptop that the students have to pay? Is that insurance? Somebody told me it's for download costs. They don't know where their money is going. It's a huge responsibility that we take on, and the Board of Commissioners take on, handling the public's money, and we're entrusted with big decisions, and I feel like the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education needs to work cohesively and have absolute transparency with the public.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to continue along the lines of some budgeting questions here, and we're going to start with Mr. Reddick and then work our way back down. And this question is, under what circumstances, if any, would you consider legal action to force the county to provide more money for schools? And the second part of that question is, would you ever be in favor of the school board having the authority to levy a tax to pay for schools?
First part of that question, Elliot, is that the state has passed a law that says that you cannot take legal action against the state. In other words, we can't, as a Board of Education, we cannot take legal action against the county commissioner. So that's not an option. That never was a good option, I can tell you, because it creates all kinds of issues that go on for years and years and years. What we have right now is a cohesive group of commissioners and Board of Education people who do have the end in mind. They have some of the very same concerns. They have some of the very same goals. So I do believe that we're in a really good position right now as far as the way we cooperate. And then the second part of your question was the one about...
You know, sometimes the school, should there be like a school tax that the Board of Education would control?
We're one of the few states that does not have the authority to tax. And I have thought about that many, many times. I think in the overall interest of the taxpayers of this county, I do not believe if you had two different entities trying to tax for some of the same goods and services, I'm not sure that would work that well.
Okay. Mr. Speranza.
Well, since the first part is illegal, then obviously no, I don't support it. Let's just go with that and make that easy. And if it ever did get to that point, whether it was illegal or not, you'd be in a sad state of affairs. If you actually have to take legal action against somebody else you're supposed to be working with, you've already lost. And the only people that would suffer for that would be the school children itself and then your taxpayers. Should we actually tax based on the schools actually setting a separate tax? No. I mean, who really wants somebody else coming over and dipping your hand into your pocket to pull it out? And although as a community we should all be encouraged to look at the education of our children, people that don't have children or grandchildren that are in the system, having them taxed just because somebody else has a child isn't fair practice when you're looking at it. So no, I don't believe that a separate tax on top of already our state and federal taxes should come out of our pockets just for the education system, or by the education system, excuse me.
Okay. Mr. Tola.
Thank you. Obviously, if we were able to take legal action against the Board of Commissioners, I would not support that. I think that would cause all kinds of issues, and I don't think that would be a good idea. I don't support levying a separate school tax. I feel like you don't get two bites of the apple. I feel like it would be double dipping, and it would be unfair to institute something like that.
Okay, Ms. Oakley.
This is a conversation I actually recently had with the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Mr. Jack Bright. He asked me a question on a radio show about this very thing, and I did not really truly understand, what he was asking me, but I did my research. And I kind of got back with him with an answer. And my thing is, as far as the first part of the question goes, it depends on what exactly we will be talking about with taking legal action against the Board of Commissioners. That is something that I am not positively versed with to actually give you a confirmation of an answer tonight. And I don't answer things when I don't really know that, and I'm gonna do my research. But anyway, as far as a taxing authority goes, what it means is that the Board of Education would have power to control the tax that supplies the money for the school system. Now, you get into a hairy situation when you do something like that, because you have a board that obviously can change from year to year, and they have the power to raise property taxes or sales taxes or whatever that might be. And depending on who's on your Board of Education, your property taxes and your sales tax could skyrocket. So no, I am not for it, because I don't think that educators should be able to choose how much money they write checks for.
Okay. And Mr. Speranza, you'll start this round. Okay. We talked about, we've had some discussion already on the issue of bullying. But the reports of bullying continue to be an issue that is often heard from parents. What should be done to address it?
To address, I'm sorry, what should be done to address
the issue of bullying in schools?
We have to look and see what would actually stop the issues. I mean, the issues aren't just at the school itself. I mean, all education starts at home. So there's got to be something that's triggering people in our society today that's getting them to act out in this way. you have to address those things, and that's where you have your counselors, your mental health counselors that are within the schools. You need to have more of them. They need to be a little bit more involved. The schools that I've walked through that have the least amount of bullying that's been reported have school resource officers that are more involved. They're actively walking around. The students see them as being visible. The ones that seem to have a little bit more, I've noticed when I've walked through the schools, the SROs are the ones that are sitting more in their office and just waiting to get called upon. And that's something that we do in the military all the time. You have your senior enlisted that walked around. We call it deck plate leadership in the Navy. We walk around, you put your eyes on your troops every day. So that way you know what's going on with them. You see something that's different. And they also got a little scared when the chief was walking around, so they kept their noses clean. So there's a visibility aspect that we can work it as well.
Okay, and we'll go back down this way, Mr. Reddick.
I think bullying probably begins at home. I think if we model good behavior at home, if we model good behavior in the schools, if they see kindness being and caring and those kinds of traits being modeled both at home and school, I think things would turn around. It's not going to happen overnight. Kids probably to some degree have always done some bullying. It's not to ever be accepted. I don't mean to diminish that at all. But I do believe that counselors at most of our schools and probably all schools take a lead in actually providing some information, providing some opportunities for kids to do that. I know when, as a principal, we had a anti-bullying, a caring kind of program in our schools, and I feel like most schools do that right now.
Okay, Ms. Oakley.
Bullying is a big part of my platform. Basically because as a child, I was one of those kids that was bullied. I was bullied for being too skinny. I was bullied for being too poor. So I can exactly resonate with some of the things that these children are facing with bullying. But what we're really not doing is allowing community resources into the school. Every community resource that I've spoken to, whether it's the health department or groups like Stand Up, Be Heard or True Justice, they cannot get into the school to help us because, for one thing, there's not a lot of time. I think if we make time, like Principal Tim Foster has at his high school, where he created Power Hour, shave the minutes from around the day how you can, so we can implement these resources back into the lives of these children. Yes, we have mental health workers on the high school level. They are in the high schools is where we put those at. Yes, we have SROs in the school, but not every demographic feels that they can approach a police officer. So we need to implement as many resources as we can to reach every single child, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, maybe there's a polka dot child that'll show up, but we never know. We need to be able to reach every one of them where they're at.
Thank you. Ms. Deptola.
Thank you. I know bullying is a huge problem here in Onslow County, speaking to so many community members who feel like they're not being heard, they're not being listened to, and the concerns are not being addressed. Bullying on the buses is a huge problem. I would support parent volunteers as bus monitors to be on the bus, watch the situations as they unfold. I feel like we need to have more education on bullying, how teachers can handle it, how students can handle when they're being bullied. They need to be sent immediately, no matter what age they are, for mental health. Children commit suicide being bullied. This happens in our country. And I was a victim of bullying, like Melissa, so I can sympathize and empathize with those students. I would support assemblies in the school where prior victims of bullying come in and speak to the students so they can see a real person with a real face, what it feels like to have gone through this. And parents need to be involved. We need to have parent accountability and a zero tolerance policy.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you start this last final round of the Q&A, and then we're going to move to the closing statements. Onslow County principals some Onslow County principals, I think it would be maybe more accurate, but have suggested eliminating the recognition of valedictorians and salutatorians. That was something that the board has not acted on. What is your opinion of that idea, which is being adopted by school systems across the state?
I don't think that's a good idea. I haven't heard of that. This is the first I'm hearing of it. I don't know what the theory is behind that. I can only imagine it's maybe because it makes other people feel badly, they're less than, they're not as good as the valedictorian or the salutatorian. I think that's a huge accomplishment. And you should absolutely be recognized for those two things. So I would not support that.
Okay. Ms. Oakley?
Those are two things that I don't think should go anywhere. Most children that actually receive that kind of recognition, they work their entire 4 years of their high school career for that. So I think they're very well deserving. We need to get away from this attitude of everybody gets a participation medal, because if you didn't work for it and you don't work for it in life, you're not going to achieve it. So in that aspect, nope, I'm totally against that.
Okay, Mr. Reddick?
It's been a long tradition of valedictorians and salutatorians. I don't really see any reason to change it. I understand the other side, the other thought. I think I could deal with it, but I think I agree with you, Melissa. I think when children set their goals early on, and some kids set their goals as early as middle school, saying, I want to be the best, I want to be that valedictorian, I think we need to continue letting kids know a work ethic means something. If you're willing to work and you want to be the top kid in your graduating class, then so be it. I don't want kids to think that they get that soccer trophy every time they run out on the field. So I sort of like the way things are. I think it's traditional, and I think people embrace it.
Okay, Mr. Speranza.
Well, I'm just going to echo everybody else here, because I said there's no reason to get rid of something like that. I know I was on the dean's list for my college degrees, but when I was in high school, I didn't want it, I didn't work for it, and there was no chance I was ever going to be a valedictorian as it went through. But again, the ones that did get it deserved it. They actually put their efforts for something, and they got what they needed. And I think that's fantastic. And right along the line, you need the work ethic. You need to realize that when you're doing something, there's a result for it, whether it's a good consequence or a bad one. Everything you do has something. So I don't see any logic to getting rid of those at all. Somebody would really have to convince me otherwise.
Okay, well, let's move to the closing statements. Thank you for moving right through the Q&A there. And Ms. Oakley, I'm going to start with you. We'll go down, and then we'll come back and complete with
I've been
Ms.
first a
Capitola.
lot tonight, haven't I? All right. Well, as you all know, like I've already said, my name is Melissa Oakley, and I'm a woman of many hats. I have never been an educator. I've only taught preschool, but I can tell you one thing, that if you elect me to the Board of Education, that these children will have somebody that they can identify with, regardless of who and what they are, if it's social class or if it's race or whatever. I can relate to those kids. I am an approachable person. I love to laugh and things like that. And I've already had a lot of parents come to me and say they are afraid to go to the Board of Education because they feel like that, I'm going to ask a stupid question. Well, there's no stupid question except for the one that we don't ask. So, I want them to have someone that's going to fight against this bullying policy, someone that's going to be able to reach the girls that are at risk of sex trafficking. Education goes beyond the books, y'all. And if we don't save our children now, what the next generation is going to come on and the world's just going to take them. We have to keep it beyond the classrooms. A few things that I stand for with my policy, and like I said, it's already online, and then most of it has been since November, but I would like to see an increase in the teacher supplemental income. We see that at the state level right now, we have a governor who is not giving our teachers any ounce of money at all. So, if we can find a way in our budget to find that money to give them something extra, just to say, hey, the state doesn't have your back, but we do, I believe that we should be able to do that. Also, another thing nobody here has talked about tonight, nobody asked a question, exceptionalities, children with exceptionalities. We need more inclusion for those kinds of students. I am the person that's thinking about the small things that make a huge difference in the lives of our children, our teachers, and our parents. Some of this stuff is just common sense. I believe in less government, of course, seeking grant funding where we can instead of using budget money, more education resources, and hey, I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that whenever I put my foot in the game to do something, I'm dedicated to the fight, and I'm going to do everything that I can for what's right.
All right, thank you. Mr. Reddick?
During early voting and even on March 3rd, citizens will go to the polls and they'll vote for candidates they feel like that will be able to lead Onslow County schools. I believe that our citizens deserve school board members who have the time, which I have time, and expertise to build relationships with the school and the community partners. I hope that we can make Onslow County a model system in this state, that we will be a beacon of brilliance for all that is good about public education. If I'm elected, I can promise these things. I'll work collaboratively with my fellow board members, and right now we have an excellent Board of Education intact. Use common sense and fiscal responsibility when it comes to taxpayers' money. Hold the superintendent, his staff, and myself accountable for managing and leading the school system. I ask that you, the citizens, support me in leading Onslow County Schools in its quest for excellence in education. That is our vision, excellence in education. When it's all said and done, our goal and my goal is to focus on student achievement. All the moving parts of this giant school system, the 11th largest in the state, should work together like a finely tuned machine to give every child the opportunity to learn and thrive in an environment of support. I promise to be fair and impartial in considering issues affecting our school system and the citizens of our community, and take a conservative approach in considering the financial, ethical, and social issues related to our schools. Your current Board of Education and I truly believe in the team approach to its governance responsibilities and has embraced the unity of purpose mentality in its sacred duty as a school board. My reason for running is to serve the schools and the citizens of this community. And finally, excellence in the classroom begins with excellence in the boardroom.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Speranza?
Well, thank you for having us here today, this afternoon, to answer the questions. As I've mentioned already, financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility, something I'm running my platform on, transparency. And the biggest thing, again, is supporting our teachers, right? Getting that information out to them and giving them the resources that they need to get the job done and teach our students. They are the professionals. You know, education begins at home, as I've mentioned before, then we dump our kids onto these people for 8 hours a day to teach them for us, all right? These are dedicated professionals. We need to support them in every way we can. I believe that the board does need to include educators, school administrators, businessmen, and parents. You need to have that kind of diverse selection so you understand all aspects of what our community is going through. I encourage you to look at all the Facebook pages for our candidates, and mine included, because I am asking for your vote. Ronald Reagan said it best when he said that there's no limit to what a man can do or where he can go when he doesn't care who gets the credit. I've mentioned already that collaboration is something I consider as a strong suit of mine. Working together with the rest of the board members, with the Board of Commissioners, it's something that I can easily get along with people. Most people normally respond pretty well to me in that way. So I'll be able to work with everybody, and when you work together, you accomplish things. We don't care who gets the credit for it. I have the time to do so. I am retired. I mentioned that already as well, too. So when I throw myself into this is what I have. This is what I'll be doing. Our children are the future. I know, cheesy line from an 80s song, got it, but it's the truth. Everything that we do affects our future generation, positively or negatively. I want to make a positive impact on our community, and that's why I'm running for the Board of Education. Thank you. Go out and vote.
Thank you. And Laura Depp.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. I don't have any education in education, teaching children. I taught preschool. My education is medical. I have a medical background. But I'm a mom of 5, so I have skin in the game. So I feel like it's important to have parents on the Board of Education who have children in the district. I feel like I would be an excellent advocate and voice for all of our children and our parents. I've also had parents tell me that they're afraid to go to a board meeting and speak because they don't want to feel stupid. So they'd rather just speak to a board member that they know personally and have them address the concern. And I want to get rid of that. I want to get rid of that stigma that, you have to be an eloquent speaker to come to a board meeting and be nervous to speak up and voice your concerns. On my page, you'll see I'm a huge anti-bullying advocate. That's one of my major things. School safety is very, very important to me. I feel like the lunch programs need to be re-looked at. That's another very big problem that we have here. I feel like transparency with the public is key. The public wants to know where their money's going, what their kids are doing. So I feel like that's really important. I feel like serving on the Board of Education is not just a privilege, but an honor, because we're trusted with big decisions. And, our Children are our future. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity.
And I thank you for participating and being as cooperative as you were with following the rules. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the candidates. The information you provided us was very informative. You all seem well prepared and did a wonderful job. I also want to thank the audience for being so respectful during the forum. Now's your chance to give them a big hand.
Yeah.
Now, if you missed any part of this forum, including the time when we were down and all that good stuff, I'm assure you it's going to be rebroadcast and all prettied up and spliced together, so it'll be perfect. So if you missed any of it, just check the listings on G10 for the times, broadcast dates and time. And remember, as they said, your vote does count. Absentee ballots are now available online at the Onslow County Board of Education website. You can also find the dates, times, and locations for early one-stop voting. Election Day is March 3rd, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. at your local precinct. On behalf of the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce, thank you for joining us today, and this concludes our program.